Okay, guys, we're in chapter 7. Now we're in part 2. We're going to be on page 211 of your study guide if you're following along in the study guide. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that green packet and answer key, and you're only going to focus on, for the next 2 videos, pretty much we're only going to focus on 4 pages. The 4 pages are going to be the log sheet and the 2 case pages, the 2 pages of cases, front and back, I think, and then also the log sheet of the 12 areas of antitrust law, in addition to your back of your answer key. Okay? Those are the only 4 things that we need, the 4 pages that you need. However you want to look at them as we go through, we're going to go through them. So let's talk about that log sheet in the packet. It should have 12 areas of antitrust law, starting with horizontal price fixing and going all the way down to mergers. Okay? There are 3 areas that are more important than others, meaning they have more questions, more scenarios, more everything that are going to be, not to say that any of the areas aren't important, but these have more questions in its test banks, thus much more likely for you to have an exam question. Kind of like in chapter 5, assault and battery and invasion of privacy and defamation are bigger than the other 4 personal intentional torts. They all have questions, but you're more than likely going to get the ones of the bigger 4 rather than the smaller 4. That's not to say you don't need to know all 8. Same basic here. You need to know all 12, but numbers 1, horizontal price fixing, number 8, price discrimination, and number 12, mergers, are going to be your 3 biggest. So if you want to circle those, numbers 1, 8, and 12 on your log sheet, those are the 3 biggest ones that we're going to have on the exam. All right. We're on page 211 in your study guide, and the first one we're talking about is horizontal restraints of trade versus vertical and stuff like that. The first thing we need to know about horizontal, if we can change the word horizontal on the exam, we can just say competitors, because horizontal is competitors. So if we're talking about horizontal price fixing, it is competitors fixing prices. Okay, when competitors fix prices, this is going to probably be bad for consumers, therefore it's likely not going to be allowed. It could be allowed depending on the circumstances, but it's likely not going to be allowed. So the first area we have is horizontal price fixing. Now, each of these areas of antitrust law are going to likely be per se rule of reason, and I don't like to put an always in there, more than likely going to be per se a rule of reason, and that's what you're going to be needing to answer on the test. Now, we talked about the personal intentional torts, especially the big 4 being a huge portion of the exam. This per se rule of reason is probably the second biggest thing on your exam. If you need to, you need to memorize which is per se, which is rule of reason, just for a bunch of questions in and of itself. The other one you need to do is you need to be able to recognize if a storyline scenario occurs, what is the area of antitrust law, and then apply the per se rule of reason to the given situation. You also need to know case names associated to it as well. Okay, so the first one is horizontal price fixing. First one is horizontal price fixing, meaning competitors fixing prices. Now, if you look on page 212 of your study guide, it talks about Sherman's price fixing, and that would be a Sherman Section 1 violation because it would be an illegal restraint of trade. That's all correct. So you have to ask yourself, is it per se or rule of reason, depending on the situation? Well, here's the thing. You have a bunch of cases in this area of horizontal price fixing. The first one should be on page 212 of your study guide, but is not there. And that is U.S. versus Trenton Potteries. This is a tier 2 case. And I believe he probably talked about this one in the video. He might not have talked about Brunswick. He may have talked about Kraft, but I'm pretty sure he talked about Trenton Potteries. Trenton Potteries is a bunch of different defendants that had agreed and conspired to fix prices in the bathroom fixture market. Okay, it was like a bunch, like 23 or so defendants. I don't know how many there were. Okay, companies and individuals. They said they agreed that they fixed prices, but they didn't think it was an unreasonable interference with trade. The courts disagreed and said this action is automatically illegal. So what Trenton Potteries did is the first real case associated to this. It established antitrust in horizontal price fixing is per se illegal. And that is the general rule for number 1. Horizontal price fixing is per se illegal. The case that established that is Trenton Potteries. This is a tier 2 case. So if you're putting on your log sheet of all the cases, this is a tier 2 case. Now, the next case is associated is not also in your textbook or study guide as well, is the Appalachian coal case. In the Appalachian coal case, during the Great Depression and all that stuff, the way to save hundreds of jobs, or at least 100 jobs I know of, was to fix prices. So the courts looked at it and the facts and circumstances as to why the prices were being fixed, and they said for this reason, this benefit, to keep jobs open and stuff like that during the Depression, they thought this action was allowed. Okay, so they looked at facts and circumstances. They took a normally per se issue, because of Trenton Potteries, horizontal price fixing, a normally per se issue, and looked at facts and circumstances, i.e. took a rule of reason approach. And in that case, they found that everyone benefited from the actions, and therefore they found the action to be allowed or legal in the eyes of the law. So Appalachian coal went against the idea of per se automatically illegal, used the rule of reason principle that we learned in Rockefeller, and then turned around and used it in a normally per se area of horizontal price fixing and had an exception under a rule of reason approach. And that exception said the actions were legal. So if you look at your back of your answer key, here's the way we should do just what we've gone over in the past. Under per se automatically illegal, you want to go ahead and put U.S. versus Trenton Potteries, because that case was automatically illegal. All right. You can put horizontal price fixing as a term under per se automatically illegal, but there's going to be exceptions. Okay. Under rule of reason, you have a legal practice. You can put in that far right-hand column, Appalachian coal case. The Appalachian coal case took a normally per se area, horizontal price fixing, and went rule of reason because cause is relevant, found the action everyone benefited, so it is a legal business practice. Okay? The next case is actually in your study guide on page 212, and that is Sconey Vacuum. In Sconey Vacuum, a bunch of independent Texas and Louisiana oilmen agreed to conspire and fix prices, not by setting prices, but by limiting the supply of oil, limiting supply of gas oil. Well, when the demand stays constant and supply is limited, if you've done any kind of economics, you know how supply and demand charts work, the price will go up. And that's what they did. They were able to artificially raise the prices, horizontal grouping to raise prices. They did it artificially by limiting the supply of the oil. By doing so, they raised prices. So they agreed to conspire to fix prices by raising them in this ruling. Sconey Vacuum reaffirmed Trenton Potteries' case that price fixing arrangements such as this are automatically illegal, per se illegal. So Sconey Vacuum, more and more moving towards a tier 1, by the way, instead of a tier 2. So it's definitely one you need to know. Sconey Vacuum reinforced Trenton Potteries. So if you want to put it, it goes under the per se illegal, right below horizontal price fixing, Trenton Potteries, all those things, you're going to put Sconey Vacuum case. All right. In the Sconey Vacuum case, there's also called a footnote 59. And footnote 59 was just a simple, famous footnote in the decision making by the courts that said horizontal price fixing schemes, such as this one, affect the central nervous system of the economy. So if he asks you a question about footnote 59, what do you need to know? It says horizontal price fixing arrangements affect the central nervous system of the economy. Is an example, the case is an example of a horizontal price fixing scheme that reinforced Trenton Potteries per se illegal. It was in the area of horizontal price fixing as well, and it was a Section 1 violation of Sherman, illegal restraining the trade. All of those things go into Sconey Vacuum. The one other thing that you need to know about Sconey Vacuum is it completely dismissed the idea behind Appalachian coal. It just reinforced Trenton Potteries and didn't care about rhyme or reason. Well, Appalachian coal had said, hey, we need to look at reasons for sometimes as well. This was completely ignored, and Sconey Vacuum reinforced automatically illegal. Okay? So if he asks you on a question, Form A, which court case completely disregarded a previous court ruling that was rule of reason and reinforce a per se, that would be Skony vacuum. If he asked you in the Skony vacuum case, which case was completely disregarded in their decision making, it would be Appalachian Coal. They go hand in hand the way you phrase the question. The answer could be one of those. All right. In the study guide, you have Arizona versus Maricopa County. Haven't heard about that. That'd be tier 3, so don't write anything in that little column there. The next one is on page 213 of your study guide, and that is the FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers Association. Now, the FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers Association falls under horizontal price fixing, and it was per se illegal. So you can put it with Skony Vacuum and Trenton Potteries in that little far left-hand column of your sheet on the back of your answer key. FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers Association. So it found horizontal price fixing theme to be per se illegal, but it also was a case of boycotting. And the boycotts were also found to be per se illegal as well. So if he asks you about the boycott portion of it or the horizontal price fixing scheme portion of this case, it doesn't matter. The answer is still going to be per se illegal. So if he says, in addition to the horizontal price fixing scheme, the boycott was also ABCD, it's per se illegal. In addition to the boycotting, it was found to be per se illegal under horizontal price fixing. And this is where attorneys took on court-appointed cases, and they're given a set fee if they belong to a professional organization. And you look on page 213 of your study guide, when it says that at the very top, it belongs to a professional organization, in parentheses, it says not a labor union. Why does it say not a labor union? Why is that important? Because in this case, remember, labor unions are exempt from antitrust law. And that's one of the last things we're going to talk about when we talk about Chapter 7, but labor unions are exempt. So if they were a labor union, they wouldn't be able to sue under antitrust violation. Okay? They tried to raise their fees to be paid. Okay? They were unsuccessful. They found that trying to raise their fees was a horizontal pricing scheme. It was per se illegal. So they boycotted and refused to take on any more cases. That was found to be also per se illegal as well. So I would note that for test purposes on page 213, FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers Association, 2 areas of antitrust law. That is a tier 2 case. Now, before we get to vertical price fixing, which is the next thing in your study guide, we have 2 more additional cases he probably talks about in video or in class about BMI versus CBS, CBS versus BMI, and NCAA versus the Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma. And I'm going back to the old study guide. I think I have it here. Hopefully have it here. Yeah, I have it here. We're going to go over the material on that because those are no longer in the study guide anymore. Okay. Okay. If we look at BMI, BMI was where royalty payments was given to people, artists, and other owners that have performance rights, like songwriters and stuff like that had a copyright on stuff that was played on the radio. Now, if you think about horizontal price fixing, that's where competitors agree to fix prices. Now, think about it this way. If Taylor Swift was to write a song and she copyrighted it, and now it's being played on radio stations constantly all over the place, what would be done? Taylor Smith or all her agents could go to each individual TV and radio station and set up a set fee for her to get paid for every time her music is played on the radio, or she can enter into a blanket licensing agreement, and that licensing agreement can apply to all TV and radio stations where she gets a set fee. Which one is more efficient? The one that is more efficient would be, honestly, the one would be more efficient is to enter into one licensing agreement, set fee, and everybody get paid based upon that. You don't have to have hundreds of contracts with various TV and radio stations. Well, but wouldn't that be an example of horizontal price fixing where you set prices, competitors set prices, and you pay a set fee? Yes, it would. And normally that is per se illegal. But remember, we talked about if some action causes it to lead to better prices or better products, more efficiency within the marketplace, this would be more efficient, or leads to increased competition, we're likely going to allow it. If we're likely going to allow it, it's got to be done on a rule of reason rather than per se, because per se is automatically illegal. So we know that it's got to be rule of reason. In this case, BMI versus CBS, they found the action. There's no other way under this horizontal price fixing scheme to do business. It was the most efficient way to do it. Therefore, they said rule of reason, per se doesn't apply, rule of reason does. And they found the actions to be legal. So you would put the BMI case probably right below the Appalachian coal case on your chart. Horizontal price fixing, it was an action that was legal. Then you have the NCAA versus Board of Regents of Oklahoma. And the NCAA had been regulating TV of college football games. And in 1981, the NCAA entered into a contract with a bunch of TV stations that the games there's going to be a set fee based upon the type of school. If a Division I, every school was paid a set fee. All Division I's got the same fee. All Division II's or Division III's, etc., stuff like that. It didn't matter how many times the teams were on or what their rating was. Those things didn't matter. Well, the problem was back in the mid-'80s when this case was 1984, Oklahoma was a national power. I guess they still are. And they were getting paid just as much as, say, a Baylor, who was, the dregs of society when it came to football in the mid-'80s. And they were getting paid just as much as Oklahoma because they were Division I as well. So the University of Oklahoma sued the NCAA. NCAA said, hey, wait a minute. Member schools, you can't negotiate individual contracts. The NCAA set the price. The universities were opposed to this because they thought they should be able to do it themselves. And the NCAA said, no, we're here to foster competition among all these different universities, these colleges. The actions by the NCAA were found against the rules by the Supreme Court. They looked at the facts and circumstances, so they used a rule of reason approach and found that the actions by the NCAA were illegal. So under rule of reason, we now have an action that is illegal. So you can put in that column right there for illegal that I'm pointing at. You can put a column there. You can put the NCAA Board of Regents of Oklahoma case. Now, when you do that, say you have on one form of the exam, you have the BMI case. And it says, answer A is an example of a horizontal price fixing arrangement. Well, that is true. B was an example of a per se area using a rule of reason approach in the best interest of that situation. Excellent answer there. B is correct. C, found the action to be a legal business practice or a legal action. That sounds good too for the BMI case. Then you get all of the above, you're in good shape. What if another person gets the same exact question, but instead of BMI gets NCA? An example of a horizontal price fixing arrangement. That's true. Took a normally per se area and used a rule of reason approach. B is correct. Found the action to be a legal business practice. No, it was found to be illegal. So C is incorrect. So it's not all of the above. It would be B and C only, and that's probably A and B only. So that would probably be answer E. So the subtle difference between BMI and NCA on the test is one was legal, one was illegal, but they both were under rule of reason. So if you look at it and he gives you a question that says, which of the following was a Section 1 violation or an example of horizontal price fixing arrangement that was per se illegal under Sherman? And it'll give you a bunch of cases and stuff like that. Scone Vacuum would be an example. FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers. Trenton Potteries would all be examples of per se illegal. But what if he throws in Kraft versus McConaughey? Kraft versus McConaughey was a horizontal price fixing scheme. It was found to be illegal. They didn't enforce the contract. But remember, Kraft versus McConaughey happened in 1875. We didn't come up with per se versus rule of reason until later on because of the Sherman Act and the Rockefeller case. So this happened, Kraft versus McConaughey happened 15 years prior to any statutory law, Sherman Act, created in the marketplace. Therefore, we don't have Kraft that falls under a per se illegal. It was an example of horizontal price fixing, but it wasn't per se illegal. So your answer to that, Scone Vacuum, Trenton Potteries, FTC versus Superior Court Trial Lawyers, all of those are correct, as in per se illegal, but Kraft, even though illegal, wouldn't have been per se illegal. And NCAA would have been illegal, but not per se illegal. So if those are your multiple choice options, either Kraft and or NCAA, they were not per se illegal, they were just illegal. Okay, so note that. There's a difference between those. The other thing we needed to talk about, and I wanted to wait until now, is because I want to talk about this with the Kraft case. we talk about the NCA. I'm sorry. We talk about Rockefeller case, and one of the things he probably says in the video or says in the study guide or something like that, it took 21 years to get Rockefeller. Well, if you think about it, the case was in 1911. Take 21 years back, that is 1890, the passing of the Sherman Act. The primary reason we had the Sherman Act was to get Rockefeller, but it took 21 years to get him. And in that 21-year period, he was able to, have a virtual monopoly on the oil market. But it took 21 years to get him before they finally broke it up into smaller competing companies and stuff like that. But you need to know that. So we had antitrust common law first in 1875 with the Crappers-McKay decision. Then we had 1890, we had Sherman creating antitrust statutory law. Then in 1911, we established rule of reason, and it took 21 years to get him under that Sherman Act. And then Clayton Act was in 1914 that established all the restrictive preventative things that we might have other sections for. All right. So now we are done with horizontal price fixing. I gave you a bunch of examples of cases and stuff like that. You might want to, you can put Kraft in there as a horizontal price fixing case as well under all the case names in your log sheet if you want, but realize it's after Sherman or before Sherman was enacted. So under per se or rule of reason, what do we want to put there now that we've done all this case? The rule is generally per se. Generally, not always. And that's one big thing that you need to know. He says A, always per se, generally per se, always rule of reason, generally per rule of reason. You have very few always. This is one of them. You're going to probably put per se with exceptions or generally per se in that column of per se rule of reason for number one, horizontal price fixing. All right. The next thing we have is vertical price fixing. In vertical price fixing, there are two types of vertical price fixing. There's vertical minimum and vertical maximum. Now, regardless, both of those are rule of reason. So on our log sheet under numbers 2 and number 3, vertical minimum, vertical maximum, it's rule of reason. We're just going to get that done now, and that way we can focus on the case and stuff like that. But you do need to know the difference between vertical minimum and vertical maximum in case that is one of your options on the exam. Regardless, the answer is rule of reason because of the leading case. And we'll talk about the leading case in a little while. Vertical price fixing is where the manufacturer, someone within the supply chain. So if you think about vertical, think supply chain. So if you want to change the word vertical in your head to supply chain, you want to change the word horizontal to competitors, you're in good shape. Horizontal means competitors, vertical means supply chain. This is where a manufacturer tells its customers, i.e. its retailers, what the price is going to be. What does it mean by vertical minimum? That means price floor. So if you want to put in parentheses there on that log sheet, price floor, it's when the manufacturer of the product says you will not sell below a certain price. You will not sell below. So what that says is this is the lowest price a thing can be sold for. Is that good or bad for consumers? Not as good as vertical maximum price fixing would be a price ceiling, the maximum you can go over. That would be much better for consumers because then Walmart or Target or Kmart or whatever business could then maybe if they say it cannot go above $5, they'll say, okay, we can go $4.50 or we can go $4.25 or we can go $4, and we can get people to buy products from us based upon lowering our price. When you can't go below a certain price, vertical minimum, i.e. price floor, then the bare minimum that you can sell it for is $500. Say it's an iPad or something like that. Sell for no less than $500. Well, then it doesn't matter whether you go to Target, Kmart, or Walmart. The minimum you're gonna have to pay at least $500, maybe more depending on the store, because they've got to make a profit. So anyway, vertical minimum, vertical maximum. Regardless, it is going to be rule of reason, and that is because of the Ligon case. And in the Ligon case overruled Dr. Miles. Now, Dr. Miles used to be a tier 2, but I don't put in that category, nor do I put State Oil versus Kahn. He's gotten rid of those. He only cares about Ligon now, and I think he even says that sometimes in the review, in the video and or in class if you were to have class. What vertical price fixing in Ligon said is, Ligon basically says you're going to be able to establish a price between retailers. And this was a case, it specifically overruled Dr. Miles. It's on page 214 of your study guide. It specifically overruled Dr. Miles and made maximum price fixing handled under rule of reason. By overruling Dr. Miles, and overturning the decision under Dr. Miles' lower court, it established all forms of price fixing, vertical maximum and vertical minimum, are going to be automatically, not automatically, are going to be per se, well, stop. They're going to be rule of reason. They're going to be rule of reason, meaning we're looking on a case-by-case basis to determine whether it's going to be legal or illegal. So, can you have a vertical minimum or a vertical maximum price fixing situation that is found to be illegal? Absolutely, but it would be done on a rule of reason approach. Okay? The reason I separated vertical price fixing into vertical minimum and vertical maximum on the chart is because he will have questions, and maybe instead of just saying vertical price fixing, he'll put in answer A, vertical maximum or vertical minimum, and you just need to know the difference and be able to choose that. Regardless, the answer will be a rule of reason. So if it says a manufacturer says to all its retailers, you cannot sell above a certain price. This would be an example of A, vertical minimum price fixing, vertical maximum price fixing, rule of reason. A and C are correct, B and C are correct. Well, if it cannot be sold above a certain price, that is going to be vertical maximum price fixing, also known as a price ceiling. It's going to use rule of reason, so it would be answer B, vertical maximum price fixing, and B, rule of reason. So you'd have like E, B, and C are both correct. If it was where the manufacturer says to the retailer you cannot sell below a certain price, then it's vertical minimum price fixing, answer A, but it's also rule of reason, so A and C would be your best answer, which I believe when I did that storyline just now would be D as your answer. So note that. All right, other cases are Dr. Miles, State Oil versus Com, but those have become tier 3. Ligon is a tier 1, tier 2 case. I would say it's when it started tier 1, it's kind of floated towards tier 2, not every single semester, but definitely you need to know all the tier 1s and tier 2s regardless. All right, the next thing we have is horizontal exchange of information. Horizontal meaning competition, competitors exchanging information. Is that good or bad? Just ask yourself, is that good or bad when competitors exchange information? The answer, as I always say in class, is an adult undergarment. It depends. And if it depends on the situation, then don't we have to look at facts and circumstances to render a decision? So therefore, horizontal exchange of information follows a rule of reason approach. So you can put horizontal exchange of information on our sheet. You can put vertical price fixing in the middle here, between legal and illegal. You can put it here. Vertical price fixing that we just did, and now you can put horizontal exchange of information in the middle as well. Why do we put it in the middle? Because it's not necessarily legal or illegal. It depends on the situation, correct? Now, in a second, we're going to put arrows when it's legal and illegal from horizontal exchange of information. But horizontal exchange of information, competitors exchanging information, can be good. If it makes for better products, more efficiency within the marketplace by exchanging information, great. If it shares information that helps out making better products, we're all for that. Now, when we talk about horizontal exchange of information, if it reduces waste or inefficiency, that's a good thing. If it helps benefit by making better products, lowering costs, all good things. But here's the thing, certain things are not going to be legal. You cannot construct a common price list, okay? So if you wanted to put under illegal that horizontal, if you put horizontal exchange of information in the middle, HEI, if you wanted to, and you put it in the middle, then you can put on illegal common price list and just put an arrow, because you cannot construct a common price list, okay? You cannot share information secretly. So secret information, you can also put an arrow to illegal, okay? If you share information in an open manner, it's probably going to be legal. So you can put a little arrow from horizontal exchange of information to legal with open manner, if you share information in an open manner. Now, what if he gives you a storyline that you share information in an open manner to construct a common price list? Well, that would still, even though you did it in an open manner and shared it, was still illegal to share a common price list, okay? So note that depending on the situation, i.e. rule of reason, horizontal exchange of information could be good or bad. It depends on the circumstances. So you need to note that. Common price list or sharing information secretly is probably going to be illegal, whereas sharing information in an open manner probably going to be legal. If you get a storyline like that, you need to note that. All right. On the top of page 215 of your study guide, we have conspiracy to restrain information. Conspiracy to restrain information has a case, FTC versus Indiana Federation of Dentists. This is a tier 2 case on the exam. Okay, tier 2. Now, it says conspiracy to restrain information, and it falls under the jurisdiction of horizontal exchange of information. But you see the word conspiracy in front of it, and everybody gets scared. In fact, I remember one person telling me years ago that on their exam, like question number 21, I don't know what number it was, but question number 21 was horizontal exchange of information. The very next question on their exam followed up, so question 22 in that case, conspiracy to restrain information follows what type of approach? And so he's like, he started to second guess himself and sees the word conspiracy and thinks, ooh, automatically illegal. Conspiracy to restrain information is under horizontal exchange of information. It follows a rule of reason approach as well. We look at facts and circumstances as to why. Just because it says conspiracy sounds bad, and it's likely going to be illegal, but it's not per se illegal. That is why I broke up number 4, horizontal exchange of information, and conspiracy. Even though they're on the same subheading, I broke them up because they're separate questions you can have. Both of them are rule of reason. So your log sheet right now should have number 1 per se with exceptions, and then numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all going to be rule of reason. They're all rule of reason. Okay. Now we need to go over the case, Indiana versus FTC versus Indiana Federation of Dentists. In this situation, a group of dentists, the Indiana Federation of Dentists, had combined and conspired conspiracy to restrain information on dental x-rays to the insurance companies. So they didn't want them to be able to see the dental x-rays because they were worried about, oh, that wouldn't be covered, that would be covered, and then they'd have to come back and get reimbursed by the clients. So let me give you an example. Say you took some x-rays and the dentist said you need to have a root canal. Well, your dental insurance covers root canals, so as long as it's a necessity. So you're like, okay, I'll do it. I'll pay the copay, say $100, and the rest of it will be done by insurance. Well, the insurance company never receives the dental x-rays, then they are just going to go on the word of the dentist. And the dentist is going to say, oh, yeah, we need you to do this. Okay. But what if they got a hold of those dental x-rays and they said, oh, whoa, this is not a necessity. This would be elective. You're on your own. We're not paying for this. Then that dentist, that same dentist who said it was going to be covered under this, would now have to go back and say, okay, it wasn't covered. You owe me $2,500. Whereas now the person may not want to be able to pay that or cannot pay that. So what the dentist just simply did is they were going to review those x-rays. They didn't want the insurance companies to review them, so they just kept them from the insurance companies so they could deem them as essential, so to speak. The Supreme Court ruled that the Indiana Federation of Dentists was illegal based upon a rule of reason approach. So on our sheet right here, you want to go rule of reason illegal, and you can put FTC versus Indiana Federation of Dentists. So far we have terms, we have areas of antitrust law, and we have a bunch of cases so far. Open manner, shared open manner, construct common price list, case names, areas of antitrust are all listed here. Okay. All right. The next one that we need to do is market divisions. And I'm looking at the packet, and I think after market divisions, we will take a break and in this video, and then we will do the last, we will do 7 through 12 after that on the next video. Now, in horizontal market division, it means horizontal competitors dividing up the marketplace. Now, if we do have a live session, there's going to be a storyline I want to give, but it's better to do in a live situation. But anyway, if not, I'll maybe do a quick video on all these quick things that are better live. All right, what does it mean by horizontal market division? The competitors agree to divvy up the marketplace. So now you're creating pockets where only one person is going to be competing in that area, and the other ones in that same industry don't get into that area. It'd be like 4, and I'm going to give an example of 4 roofing companies. I'll come up with something later if we do a live session. Roofing companies, because you have US versus Suntar Roofing is a case. So say you get 4 roofing companies, the main 4 roofing companies in Bryan College Station. If they agree, someone gets north, someone gets south, someone gets east and someone gets west, and they agree not to enter into each other's geographic area, then now they've created basically a monopoly within their geographic area because they don't have any competition. Maybe some smaller roofing companies, yes, but they don't have any real big competition amongst the big four because they've divided up the marketplace to where they're not going to compete against one another. And that's what Suntar Roofing and Romans Roofing agreed to do. They agreed to have a customer allocation plan where they divided Kansas City up, a big city. Now, two roofing companies dividing up a big city like Kansas City, isn't going to be enough for it to be a monopoly created. So they went Section 1 violation, illegal restraint of trade. This went all the way to the 10th Circuit Court, and they found the actions to be illegal. Now, this horizontal market division. Horizontal market divisions are going to be per se illegal. Per se, as long as it involves more than one company. Well, if it's a Section 1 violation, it has to involve more than one party. So it's going to be, if it's a Section 1 violation, it's more than one company. If it is to create a monopoly, but you do it with other companies, you're still dealing with more than one company, so it's still going to be illegal. Horizontal market divisions are per se illegal. You want to put that in that chart on your far left-hand side, horizontal market divisions. If we have time, we'll do a video live session on that. We'll go over about 8 or 9 things. Otherwise, I'll make a video, hopefully maybe Monday night, that you can look over with storylines. I'm trying to save a few stories for a live session if I can. All right, so horizontal market division number 6 is per se illegal. And this is because they did it geographically. It could be customer allocation based on an alphabet or something like that as well, based on your last name, but usually it's going to be geographic based. Okay, you divide up the sales area. All right, we are going to end there. We are now going to be doing, well, actually, let's go ahead and do vertical market divisions as well, because that way we'll start at price discrimination. Vertical market divisions, number 7. If you look on page 216 of your study guide, a vertical market division is where a manufacturer tells a retailer where they can sell a product. Okay? And the example of this would be franchise or distributorship, where the manufacturer, say of an automobile, gives a distributorship the right to sell their cars in that geographic area. And they're probably not going to give anybody else that geographic area. Same thing with franchises. Now, franchises, there could be like 8 or 9 different Chick-fil-A's in a certain city, but you're going to have each next to each has its own little geographic area. That doesn't mean that customers can't come from one area to another to get certain items. They can go to different car dealerships, but you're going to be given that area and that area alone. Okay? If you sell outside of your territory where someone else has that territory already marked by the manufacturer, then they can revoke your franchise or revoke your dealership or something like that, or distributorship situation. So vertical market division is basically where the manufacturer tells a retailer where they can sell a product. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on when we talk about exclusive dealing contracts and combine both of them. But basically, it's where the manufacturer says you and you alone are the only one that's going to be able to sell this product. And that may be depending on other characteristics. We'll get to that a bit later. If you look at the case law, all 3 cases on page 216, White Motor Company, Continental TV, Business Electronic, all of them say rule of reason. If you look at White Motor Company, number 4, it says, number 4, number 5, company's actions are based upon a rule of reason approach. Continental TV, number 4, rule of reason approach. Number of Business Electronic, firmly established rule of reason unless. So for the most part, since there's no less, it is going to be rule of reason for vertical market division, also known as vertical market restraint. I talked about this with product disparagement, and it's now called disparagement, but some of those questions may still have may have product disparagement still, even though the study guide says disparagement in chapter 5. Same thing here. Vertical market division and vertical market restraints are basically the same thing for test purposes. Okay? Anyway, those 3 cases, all tier 3s, I don't think you need to know them, other than they have one underlining premise, that established vertical market divisions are rule of reason. So we have number 6, horizontal market divisions is per se illegal, and number 7 is rule of reason for vertical market divisions. Be able to recognize a vertical market division, a franchise, a distributorship would be an excellent example. If I gave you an example of, say, a clothing manufacturer that makes jeans, saying that they are only going to allow Buckle to sell their jeans in the Bryan College Station area, only their jeans. That would be a vertical market division or vertical market restraint, because they're basically saying you have the right to sell our product in this area. Okay. Now, there may come little things associated to that, given that right to do so. That'll come into a later portion of it. So we're now done through numbers 1 through 7 on our log sheet. We have 8 through 12 to go, so we have 5 more to go. We're going to end on page 216. Group boycotts at the very bottom, page 216. Group boycotts, regardless, number 11 is going to be per se illegal. We're not going to spend much time on that at all. But it's right there, and it's also later on the study guide. So we're going to say group boycotts, whether horizontal or vertical, are going to be per se illegal. So you can do number 11 real quick as well. We're going to start up on page 217, the study guide. On part 3 material, we're going to talk about price discrimination and mergers, along with the other ones. But those two are the bigger ones in terms of storyline scenarios. Then we're going to talk about the exceptions to antitrust law. Shouldn't take but a couple of minutes there. And then we'll go over the questions in the back of the study guide that might be pertinent or might be decent for you for the exam. I'm going to go ahead and end this video and download it real quick so we can go to YouTube now, because I'm not sure when part 3 will be done.